Hi there, Nicole here today. Thanks for joining me. Today I am sharing a card featuring the Lawn Fawn Forest Feast stamps and dies and the Birch dies. I have combined these with several previously released stamps and dies from Lawn Fawn to create a Thanksgiving themed Forest Feast card. I'm going to start by stamping my images. I stamped that large tree stump from the Forest Feast stamp set with walnut Lawn Fawn ink. And then all of these images, lots of images from not only Forest Feast, but the Thankful Mice stamp set. This was a little mini stamp set from a year or two ago, and I just think it pairs so nicely with those little pilgrim mice on there with the Forest Feast stamp set. Now I'm coloring in my tree stump, being pretty careful. These dye inks from Lawn Fawn, with the exception of the jet black ink, which is specially formulated for Copic marker coloring, could maybe bleed if you oversaturate them. So while I'm coloring in the top of that tree stump with some light earth tone markers and then adding some shading to the rest of the tree stump with Copic markers, I'm being kind of careful, making sure and letting the ink dry really well, because I don't want that brown ink to bleed and possibly ruin the image. Once I have the tree stump colored in the way I want it to look, I'm going to start coloring the rest of the images, starting with the raccoon from Forest Feast. All the colors of Copic markers I'm using are shown across the bottom of the screen for easy reference. Love these little critters, love how fun they are. I think it's super cute to create a kind of critters in the forest having a Thanksgiving celebration feast. Very, very cute, very clever, and so easy to create multiple different scenes with this stamp set. Wouldn't even have to be necessarily a Thanksgiving type card. Leave out the Pilgrim Hats and things like that, and this could just maybe be a tea party in the forest if you wanted to. Switch up the images you're using and you can create all kinds of different types of cards. The apples are next, R24 and R46, plus I'm going to use that same color combination for the tops of the mushrooms, which the mushroom stools are so cute. You can kind of position them around the tree stump to look like they're little chairs. Very cute. This adds a nice pop of color, especially with so many neutral colors throughout the design. These stems are YG01 and YG17. I'm going to go back to the mice now and start coloring those in with those same warm gray shades, with the exception of the darkest color that I used for the raccoon. I'm going to color one of the mice in just a little bit lighter than the other one, and then blend that all out. Do some nice shading, a little R00 for the insides of the ears, also for the cheeks on the little female mouse. The stems of the mushrooms are in some yellow, red colors, YR31, 24, and 27. Darken that up a little bit, blend it all out. Also the spots on the mushrooms. I'm going to use a couple of those same colors for the piece of cheese. Now, I ended up not using the cheese. It just didn't work out, and I didn't think it fit very well. So I actually left that out. I did die cut it, so I slipped it into my stamp pocket, and I'm just going to save it because I can use it on another card at another time. Also going to use some of those same colors for the pumpkin pie, and then move on to coloring in the hedgehog. These are a lot of the same colors that I used for the inside portion of that tree stump that I colored at the beginning with E30, 31, 55, and 57. Also R00 to pinken up his underside just a little bit. Quite a bit of shading here to get it blended out the way I wanted it to look. Next, I kind of colored these like bread in a bowl. So very neutral colors with E40, 43, and 44. Little E30 and E31 for the crust on the pie, and E40 and 43 just to add some shading to the dollop of Cool Whip there on the pie. The acorns are next with some E55 and E57. Very small, so not a ton of different coloring. And I'm trying to figure out what color to color my squirrel, and that kind of evaded me until the end. So I ended up skipping to the dishes that the bread and the mashed potatoes are in with BG 72, 75, and 78. Nice little hint of blue there. Adds another little different color than all the neutrals in the card. E40 and 43 for the mashed potatoes, just to add a hint of color. For the Pilgrim hats, I decided to go with E44 and E49. Do those in brown with gold buckles, which are those YR31 and 24 that I used for the cheese, for the mushrooms, for the pumpkin pie. Adds a nice little gold band there all the way around. And I think the brown, the dark brown, is a nice contrast to the grays of the animals that the hats are going to be on. E40, 43, and 44 for the bonnet on the little female pilgrim's head. Very, very minimal E44, mostly E40 and 43. And finally, the squirrel. This is E99, and I'm going to darken it up with E59. I really like this as the base color. I was having trouble with my shading color, and I think this works pretty well. So just very simple shading. Now, once all of the coloring is done for all of the images, I'm going to take the dies from Forest Feast and Thankful Mice and die cut everything using a little post-it tape to hold the dies in place until I get them run through the machine. Especially when die cutting this many images, sometimes it can be a little tricky. In addition to all the images that I have stamped and colored and then die cut, I felt like I needed some leaves. I want my birch trees to have some leaves on them. These leaves are from the Jump for Joy stamp set. Solid leaf images. There's also some outlines that I chose not to use. The solid leaves are going to be great. Stamped with sunflower, pumpkin spice, and chili pepper Lawn Fawn die inks, and then die cut with the coordinating dies. For my background, I die cut some borders using the stitched hillside borders. After die cutting that with a stitched rectangle die, for my background, that's a Watercolor Wishes paper, and then the grassy border and the trees are from the brand new Knock on Wood 6x6 paper pad. The trees were die cut with the birch trees. Very simple borders, simple background, but it's going to all go into building that scene. Now, before I attach anything at all, I want to stamp my greetings. And the greetings are all from the Forest Feast stamp set. And I want to position them in the center. And the greetings and the scene are going to be framed up by all of the rest of the pieces. Now, if you stamp this is going to be 3 lines of text, essentially. It's going to read, Happy Thanksgiving, hope it's tasty. If you start with the middle greeting first, because I want to stamp each individually so that they're kind of squished up and closer together. I'm going to start with the middle greeting, which is Thanksgiving. Stamp that with a black ink. This is the black licorice ink from Lawn Fawn. You can stamp the other 2 at the same time. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to line up that little subtext or sub-greeting, and then the greeting that goes on top, and I can get those nice and close together. And instead of having to stamp 3 lines of text, I can stamp the images just with 2 presses of the MISTI. Once that's done, I'm ready to start adding my borders. Again, this is the pattern paper from the new Knock on Wood collection. Die cut with a stitched rectangle die first, the A2 size stitched rectangle, and then the stitched hillside borders. The trees, the birch trees, were all die cut from some of that Knock on Wood paper as well. And to add adhesive to the back, I'm running them all through the Xyron sticker maker. And this is going to make them all nice and sticky. I'm going to peel off the front paper, then simply peel up the trees and tuck them behind the different layers. Some will be sitting in the front on the card. And I want to position them again so that nothing covers up the greeting, that the greeting is nice and framed up, and it's going to be sitting up above the little raccoon pilgrim once I get everything in place. I'm not pressing these down yet because I want to make sure that I get them placed exactly where I want them to so that nothing is overlapped too much and that the greeting isn't covered up at all. I'll even trim down some of these. You're never going to know it, so if some of them are going to be tucked behind that stitched hillside border, just going to trim off a little bit of that excess to make it easier to get it tucked underneath. Scene building is one of my favorite ways to create a card. I think it's so fun to watch the whole little scene come to life, and it really adds a great background element to all of these other stamped and colored images. I'm taking those die cut leaves that we just did from the Jump for Joy stamp set and putting them on the trees, so it appears that some of the trees, while they're losing their leaves, some leaves are still remaining, but they're all in those fantastic fall colors. I think I'm even going to need a few additional leaves. I want a couple to tuck on the ground with the rest of my scene, and once I start putting everything in place, you'll see that a little bit. I ended up adding a few additional leaves, I think 3 along the scene along the bottom, so it looks like those leaves are working at falling off the trees. Again, snip down, trim down some of these trees. You'll never know. And then anything hanging off the edge, I am going to trim off with some scissors, and that's going to clean it all up really nice. I have some of my elements already in place that I've already attached. So some of the food is on the table. One of the little mushroom stools is sitting there. I have multiple apples. The raccoon is holding one, and then one on the table and one down on the ground. Go ahead and add my pilgrim mouse. The squirrel sitting on the mushroom holding an acorn. Also the mashed potatoes on the table. Add my other little mushroom stool with the hedgehog sitting on that. Add another mouse. Place my remaining leaves on the trees. This is really going to help finish off the top of the card. Not only, the trees are fantastic, but I really think these little pops of color throughout the top of the card, where there's so much going on in the bottom half, this adds nice interest, it adds color, it's fantastic. Again, anything hanging off the edge, you just want to trim up. This whole panel is A2 sized. It will fill the front of an entire card. I'm going to go ahead and secure my card to this white side fold card base to finish the design. Thanks for joining me today for this Thanksgiving card featuring the Lawn Fawn Forest Feast stamps and dies, birch dies, and lots of other Lawn Fawn stamps and dies. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Lawn Fawn that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.